Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a really powerful story that, well, it serves as a chilling case study on faith, despair, and the terrifying road to extremism. We're going to look at how a man of God, someone completely cornered by failure, can start to believe he's hearing the voice of a very, very different kind of God.
Okay, let's just jump right in and get inside the head of Pastor Jacob Collins. This isn't just someone having a bad day at work. This is a soul-deep exhaustion. He's standing in a church that's dying, in a city that's dying, a place where hope is pretty much the scarcest thing around. The streets outside, all boarded-up homes, shuttered businesses, it's a constant reminder of a promise that's been broken. And for Jacob, every single sermon just feels like a lie, a performance. This is a man at the absolute end of his rope.
And that was his reality. Flint, Michigan had lost over 37,000 jobs, but a number like that, it doesn't even begin to capture what that feels like. It doesn't describe the silence when the factories go quiet for good. It doesn't tell you about the families packing up and leaving, the spike in suicides, that feeling of just being completely left behind. This wasn't just some economic downturn. It was a spiritual apocalypse. It created this huge vacuum, and as people lost trust in the world, well, they lost their faith in God too. And that left Jacob's church almost completely empty.
So to really understand how a man's despair could curdle into this kind of violence, we're going to chart his fall through 5 acts. We're going to trace the twisted logic that took him down such a dark, dark path.
All right, let's start at the beginning. A city without faith. You have to start here, with the world that shaped Jacob's desperation. People aren't just born extremists. They're often forged in the fires of their surroundings. You see, Flint's collapse, it was more than just financial. It created this crisis of faith that landed right in Jacob's empty church. People would come up to him and ask, "Pastor, where was God when my husband got laid off?" The questions started to sound like accusations. And Jacob, he had no answers. So they left, one by one, until he was preaching to just 9 people in a sanctuary built for hundreds. His ministry wasn't just failing, it was a monument to God's silence in a city's broken heart.
And if all that public failure wasn't enough, there was this deep, private shame. The ghost of his father, Harold. His dad was a giant, a man who built this church and filled it with life. Jacob didn't just inherit a building, he inherited an impossible legacy. Every empty seat wasn't just a lost member, it was a personal little whisper in his ear, telling him he wasn't and never would be the man his father was. This is the sound of a man's faith just breaking into pieces. His prayers aren't about hope anymore, they're just these hollow confessions of failure, aimed at a heaven that feels completely silent. He thinks he's failed his city, his father, and God himself. And it's right here, in this kind of profound darkness, that the soil of his heart becomes fertile for a new, and really terrible, kind of revelation to take root.
So, what happens when a man that desperate gets what looks like a sign? Well, this is where the story takes a sharp, violent turn. This moment of crisis becomes a moment of truly terrible revelation.
Jacob's friend Daryl, who's, let's just say he's very zealous, he pushes Jacob into this mission in East Wyling. And we're talking about the most dangerous, crime-ridden neighborhood in Flint, a place every other church has just given up on. For Jacob, this is a last-ditch effort, one final, desperate attempt to prove that his father's way, the way of gentle faith, can still actually work.
And it goes exactly as you might fear, horribly. They get ambushed, and Jacob's dear friend, a fellow minister named Christopher, gets a beer bottle smashed into his head. For Jacob, this isn't just some random act of violence. No. This is the universe confirming his deepest, darkest fear. His God is powerless here. His last act of faith was answered not with salvation, but with blood.
Now, watch what happens next. It's like this terrible chain reaction. The attack lights a fuse in Jacob, this rage he's never felt before. Daryl sees that rage, and he acts on it. He orchestrates an arson that destroys the apartment complex. And then, the miracle. The very next Sunday, the terrified survivors from East Wyling, the same people who had mocked them, they flood into Jacob's church, desperate for salvation. For the first time in years, his pews are full. And this becomes the central, corrupting question of his entire ministry. I mean, think about it. He prayed, he fasted, he wept, and his church died. But when fire rained down, the people came back. And the congregation, they weren't questioning it either. They were just relieved to see a sign of power, any power, in their powerless lives. Jacob learned a terrible and seductive lesson that day.
In a city that feels abandoned by God, fear can be a much better preacher than love. All right, next up, the Holy War. Because after that success, Jacob's despair transforms into this terrifying sense of purpose. He's not a failed pastor anymore. Oh no. In his mind, he is now a prophet for a vengeful God. And he has found his next target.
So the conflict kicks off when two young kids from his now growing church are lured into a new nightclub, MGM's, and are intentionally shown pornography. Now, the old Jacob, he would have called the police. But the new Jacob, this isn't just an incident to him. This is a declaration of war from a clear, identifiable enemy.
And this is the crucial part. You see how he frames this for his people. This is no longer a social issue. It is a spiritual war. He casts himself as a general, and his flock as his soldiers. He elevates this whole thing beyond reason, and he turns his followers from a congregation into an army that's willing to do whatever it takes.
So then, during a protest that gets broadcast on the local news, he invokes the Old Testament prophet Elijah, the guy who literally called down fire from heaven to consume his enemies. This is an incredible piece of manipulation. He's not just suggesting God will judge them, he is publicly claiming that he has the power to do it himself. He's basically anointing himself a living prophet on live TV.
And that's it. That's the point of no return. That's not a prayer. It's not a warning. It is a public threat. It's a prophecy. He has every intention of fulfilling himself. And his congregation, they're so hungry for a champion, they just roar with approval. They're all complicit now.
And just like he prophesied, fire falls. Jacob pays for it, Daryl hires an accomplice, and they burn the MGM nightclub to the ground, and someone dies inside. The prophecy is fulfilled with arson and murder. And to his flock, Jacob Collins is now a man who speaks and God acts.
So the miracles are working. The church is absolutely exploding with new members drawn to this raw show of power. But these miracles, they're built on lies and blood. And they come at a terrible, terrible human cost as the truth starts to unravel.
The first price he pays is his moral compass. His oldest friend, Christopher, the man who was injured back in East Willing, he just can't stomach this new ministry of hate. He sees the ugly truth for what it is, and he resigns. But Jacob, he's so deep in his delusion, he doesn't see it as losing a friend. He just sees it as shedding a doubter who wasn't strong enough for real faith.
But his other friend, Henry Williamson, he's a man of integrity, and he can't just walk away. So he starts quietly piecing it all together. The rumors, the suspicious cash withdrawal, the fact that a homeless man suddenly has a new apartment, the pieces all point to an unthinkable conclusion. And he's not doing this to attack Jacob, it's an act of love. He's desperately trying to save his friend from the monster he's becoming.
And this slide really shows you the fork in the road, doesn't it? Henry represents true faith, seeking truth, seeking redemption. Jacob, though, he isn't serving God anymore. He's serving his ministry, this new idol he's built. So when Daryl warns him that Henry's getting too close, Jacob has to make a choice. His friend's life or his kingdom? He chooses the kingdom.
Henry's search for the truth ends in tragedy. Daryl murders him to protect the secret, to silence the one person who could bring Jacob's entire kingdom of lies crashing down. And Jacob knew. He knew the danger Henry was in. He could have stopped it. His silence was a death sentence, and that makes him just as guilty.
And then, in just the most sickening act of hypocrisy imaginable, Jacob delivers the eulogy for the friend he allowed to be killed. He stands in front of his whole church, performing grief, twisting Henry's murder into just another test of faith for them all. And the congregation? They're so blinded by their devotion, they weep right along with him, never even suspecting the rot beneath the robes. The corruption is now absolute.
And that brings us to the final chilling act. Jacob Collins, the man who was once so tired of the masquerade, is now standing at the head of a packed church. By any external measure, he is a staggering success.
So it's the 49th anniversary of the church, and Jacob is preaching to a standing room only crowd. They are hanging on his every word. They look at him and they see a powerful man of God who stood up to evil and actually won. The applause is deafening. It's a picture of absolute triumphant success.
But this success is just an illusion. It's a kingdom built on a foundation of ash and loss. His conscience, his oldest friend, he's gone.
His integrity, his brother in faith who tried to save his soul, he is dead and buried.
And his most loyal follower, the sword that carried out his will,
He is finally betrayed. To save himself, as the police start closing in, Jacob gives them Daryl's name. His first and most fervent disciple is sacrificed to protect the throne.
And here it is, the final terrible irony. The very instrument of Jacob's rise becomes the instrument of his fall. Daryl, the man who set the fires that built this new church, now brings one last fire to destroy it all, driven by the ultimate betrayal from the pastor he idolized. The firebringer brings the fire home.
So in the end, what was the final tally? He gained a full church, but he lost his best friends. He gained notoriety across the city, but he lost his moral integrity. He finally felt that power his father had, but in doing so, he lost any connection to the God his father actually served. He gained the whole world, and then, in those final, fiery moments, he lost that too.
This story is just a dark, dark cautionary tale. It forces us to ask a really unsettling question. When people are left with nothing, no jobs, no hope, no faith in the systems that are supposed to protect them, who gets to define what God's will is? Because in a vacuum of despair, it's always the loudest, most violent, and most certain voices that can be all too easily mistaken for the divine.